But more than just the controls, the mechanics of the game would also involve um, the, the classes of the characters that you can play,
Hmm.
the three main classes, as well as the leveling structure.
Hmm.
So let's discuss that. What are the three classes of of characters that you can play in Destiny?
You can play as a Titan, a
What is
Warlock.
a Titan? Let's just do them one at a time.
Okay, so you got your Titan. Your Titan is kind of okay. Well, first of all, each class has three subclasses. So the Titan, you can be like a striker, a defender. I honestly don't even know what the third one is yet. I don't have it unlocked. Um,
But they're not available right away. You
no,
start
right.
your class as a Titan, and then you eventually come across subclasses.
Yes, yeah, and you earn them, and each class needs to be leveled up individually via
And can you
gaining
play all three of
experience
them at
points.
one time, or do you have to choose one path and go down that path?
You can play any class you want as soon as you reach it and you unlock it
Do you
whenever you
then
want.
okay? And do you abandon the other one, or do you still get all those special powers from the other subclasses?
So, for example, so I started my Titan, and I leveled up. I earned the ability to double jump, throw grenades, have a superpower, and things like that. And when I unlocked my Defender subclass, I chose my Defender subclass, but I have to earn again the ability to double jump and throw
Oh,
grenades and get a superpower for that. However, when I go back to my Striker subclass, all my progress there is still there. And essentially, what you're doing with these, for the most part, I guess I should say that each class has kind of like different, I guess you could say, abilities that you unlock. So you're kind of like customizing how they play, and what their purpose is in combat. Um, and each one is kind of more so meant for player versus player combat, or maybe player versus environment rating and things like that. And even within that, each can be tweaked a little bit. So, for
okay.
example, if I know that I'm going into straight up deathmatch player versus player, I might go to my striker class because they're faster. They're meant to be able to take on large amounts of enemy with like brute strength and stuff like that. However, if I'm going into a giant raid with either 3 or 6 players, I might go with my defender subclass so that I can take more hits from the enemies. I can put a force field bubble, or out in the field for like companions to go under and get abilities from. And each class has something like that where they're they're either built to play a little bit more selfishly and just kind of put out damage, or they're built to assist other players. And even within that, arguably each class has, you know, um, each class has its uses in player versus environment, and each class has its uses in player versus player. Um, a couple buddies of mine were giving me crap for playing a defender, my defender class in player versus player. They're saying, you just put a bubble out, like your bubble's not doing anything for us. But the second I put my bubble over a flag in the control game mode in player versus player, and we're able to hold down a territory under my bubbles, which isn't penetrable by bullets, it's like all of a sudden it's really cool, and it becomes one of those games where the more you know about your class and how to play it, the better you can benefit your team in
Hmm.
pretty much any scenario. Sorry, I don't mean to get off track.
No, no, no. Okay, so all right, so we've got Titan. And there are three subclasses, and then
Yes.
there's Warlock,
Hmm.
and Titan is clearly like the heavy, right?
Yes.
Big guns, lots of damage,
Hmm.
defense. What does Warlock do?
Warlock is kind of they're sort of like a glass cannon. They're the mage class. They are incredibly powerful, incredibly frail, um, and they have like long range magic based super attacks. Um, so while they're frail, the one thing that the Warlock does do is it has the ability to regenerate its shield and its life very quickly. So they'll take damage, but if they go behind cover, they can get things up and running back in action again. Um, they also, kind of like all the other classes, they have really good. They have like a really good assist class where they're making orbs of energy for other players when they're doing damage to other people and stuff like that. But I've never played one. I've played alongside them on many occasions, but I don't have any hands-on experience with other classes besides the Titan right now.
Okay. And then the next one's Hunter.
Right, which you can probably speak to a lot more than me. You said you were playing one, but there are also, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, they're kind of like, they're like the rogues. They're also sort of like glass cannons, where I bet you anything they do even more damage than warlocks, and they're kind of frail, but I don't think they regenerate quite as easily. But they also make really good like long-range sniper type characters. You can go with the Blade Dancer. I don't know if Blade Dancer is an ability or a class, but you can kind of like go in with really powerful melee attacks. They also have the ability later on, because I've seen it, where they can do this thing where they can crouch down for about 3 seconds and go stealth and then sneak up on
Mhm.
opponents, whether it's the enemies in the game or other players and player versus player, and like sneak up behind them and attack for like bonus damage and stuff like that. They're kind of like rogues.
Yeah, I didn't get to the point where I unlocked any of those stealth abilities, although I am really good at crouching and using my melee attack.
Okay, yeah, that
um,
might be for you. When you get to that point where you can get that ability, you might be in heaven.
yeah, yeah, I was gonna say like, man, that would have been sweet.
Yeah.
uh, I don't. There's a certain point. And I don't know if this is a bizarre pretension, but there are certain enemies I don't feel are worthy of my bullets. So the dregs in particular, which are like the
Yes.
lowest of the low, those on
Uh-huh.
the thralls. Um, I don't like using my bullets on those characters because they don't do enough damage to keep me at bay,
Hmm.
and ammo is semi-scarce in the game. I always feel like I'm at the edge of running out,
Really?
or I'm always
Okay.
worried. Like I'll get into a giant firefight, and I'm like, okay, I'm using all the bullets for this gun, and my special weapon is empty, and my heavy's empty, and all I've got is my primary weapon. Um, so knowing that that could happen, I don't want to expend ammunition on certain enemies, and so I
Yeah.
will run up to the dregs every time and just stab them. And one of the cool skills, I don't know if other classes get this. I don't think they do, but the hunter gets a throwing knife that recharges.
Oh, that's cool. No.
Yeah, it's really nice because it's as much damage, if not a little bit more. It pierces through shields pretty well, um, and it's nice from a distance. As I'm running up to one of the, if there are like three dregs there, I can hit the knife with one of them, stab the next one, and then just go right back to my gun and take out the last one with a single shot, typically.
That's really cool. Wait, so do you get the throwing knife in addition to a grenade?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that's another cool thing. I can throw a grenade in, damage everybody really quickly, and then
Hmm.
stab, stab, stab. Um,
Wow. Do
yeah.
you get do you also get like a cool, I know you have your knife, correct me if I'm wrong, but the knife attack is like your melee attack. As a Titan, I have this thing that I can do in my Defender subclass. I don't know if it works in the other ones, where if I down an enemy with a melee attack, it's like I get a bonus. Like if I hit an enemy with a melee attack and they actually die, I get like a shield that goes over my body. It makes me absorb more damage. It makes me faster for a set amount of time. And I don't know if that's special to me or if other classes get similar things.
I would have guessed that the hunter gets something like that eventually. I don't
Okay.
think I came across it, but there's clearly more room for stuff like that, and some modifiers that come with pieces of equipment or other abilities um, revolve around that. There are some that say, like, if you kill with a melee attack, you then reload quicker, or you move to your next melee attack more quickly.
Yeah.
Um, oh god, there's one in particular that's right at the edge of my tongue. I can't recall it. Um, but also there's some upgrades on sniper rifles where if the last bullet is a killing bullet, you then reload really quickly,
Oh,
twice the
nice.
speed.
Yeah.
I got this one special ability. It's called Cursed Woe or something like that. And if you kill with a if you kill with a throwing knife,
Hmm.
you then get a bonus to your next melee attack, and it gives you a countdown timer. So you have to do it in the next 5 seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it encourages you to kill with your knife, and then kill again with your knife, and then kill again with your knife, and keep that timer up. There's also oh wait, maybe I'm getting some of the powers confused because there's also another one where if I do a precision kill,
Hmm.
which is I think just a headshot,
Hmm.
it then gives me a countdown timer again, and the more precision kills that I get within that window, I get a multiplier times 2 times 3 times 4,
Huh.
and does more and more damage, and it's easier and easier to get those precision kills. So I think the best I've done is like 5 in a row. So I'm not particularly talented, but
Well,
typically 5 in a row takes out a large portion of your enemies.
yeah, and that's what they did again gameplay wise. Was Bungie did that. I guess they're infamous for it now. Where they claim like our games are really just like 30 seconds of like really fun gameplay that people do over and over and over again. And it was like that since Halo 1, and yeah, they sort of did that, except because the world is open and persistent now. The difference is like if you come across a group of say 6 enemies, you have that awesome 30 seconds or so that it takes to take them all out, and now drop ships regularly come into the world at regular intervals, and they drop that same cluster of enemies right down for you or somebody else to take out.
Yeah, it's constantly refeeding you.
Yeah.
Enemies respawn fairly quickly.
Um.
Sorry. So we've got the classes.
Yeah.
There's Titan, which is the heavy. There's the Warlock, which is, like you said, the glass cannon, long range but brittle, and the Hunter's kind of in between.
Yeah.
They're good for long range. They're a little bit stronger, so they're also really good up close. But they can't take too much damage. They can take more than the Warlock and so forth. So then how about the actual leveling itself? Because one thing that I noticed that I actually was a little bothered by was that in a game like Child of Light, you get this skill tree, and you get to choose the path that you take along the skill tree, and you can pursue them at any time, or pursue a different direction at any time. I think Diablo is pretty similar to that. You get some powers that you choose to upgrade, and you can ignore some others, and that gives you a stronger ability to customize your character to the style of play that you want to do. Whereas I felt like Destiny had a very set track of which abilities came next. I wasn't ever actually choosing to go down a particular path. It sounds like with the subclasses, you get a little bit more choice, or at least you get to choose what your current focus is. But are those skills still pretty much linear?
Yeah, no, you're right in that.
Progression still linear?
Aside from subclasses, aside from the ability to choose a subclass at whichever point you decide to pursue them, eventually, let's say 2 players are playing the same class and they both put 100 hours into the game. Ability-wise, they're going to have the same exact abilities available to them because, like you said, it's kind of like you're just going through the beats of unlocking stuff once you earn enough experience points in the game. And so while the differences become how different players choose to use those same pool sets of abilities, because you can't have everything equipped at the same time. Like, for example, you'll earn your grenade ability, but you'll have the ability to choose between like 3 different styles of grenades. Or, for example, with my Titan, any Titan who fills out the Defender subclass will have that ability to put the shield bubble over the players, but within that shield bubble, you'll be able to make it so that when you and any of your teammates are under it, you have an insane amount of defense. When you or your teammates pass through that shield, you are granted a defensive barrier that goes around your body, or you can set it so that when you go through that same bubble and you walk out of it, everybody's damage output is increased for a set amount of time. And so while every Titan player will have the ability to choose those same exact things, like I said, how you equip and kind of like customize how you're using each class is kind of an individual thing up until the point guides and things like that are posted online that say to be most effective during this raid or this type of like PvP, you should just equip these bubbles. It's like it's going to come down to preference and strategy and things like that. But your abilities in the game are not really what defines your character as an individual, if that makes sense.
Yeah, actually, it brings up an interesting question, and I don't know if that belongs here just yet, but it's MMORPG role-playing game. And certainly your character can play a different role in combat, and that's even where RPG began, rather than it being a character with motivations and story. Your role in the game was combat-centric. But is it... has RPG taken on a more plot-based definition, or can you still consider it a role-playing game and just being and that role being combat focused?
It's interesting that you bring that up. Last night when I was playing with a friend, and we were chatting over headset while we were running around the tower in the game. Anybody that doesn't know, the tower is kind of like this hub, this place on Earth that you go to decrypt items and buy new gear sometimes and trade.
It's like your market, basically.
Yeah, it's your market. Yeah, there you go.
And combat free. It goes from first person to third person.
Yeah, yeah.
Changes perspectives and everything. It's basically an elaborate pause screen.
Yeah, sort of. It's your safe zone.
Very safe.
But and when we were there, I kind of said, I wonder if anybody playing this game is constantly in character. And he said, like, well, what do you mean? He said, we're all in character. And I said, yeah, but you and I are running around here, and we're just kind of like talking and cracking jokes and stuff like that. I said, I wonder if there's anybody who plays their human warlock character that's all, like dressed in kind of like black garb and emblems and stuff like that. I wonder if they've given their character like a very serious persona, a very serious dark persona, and so whether they're on voice chat or not, when they're walking around the tower, they're literally kind of like walking through and literally role playing their character. So therefore, to like answer your question, I do think that role playing still has more to do with like your combat roles and things like that. I think role playing has to do with lore and history, and whether or not you latch onto that is a very individual thing. But because Bungie has gone to the extent of giving the world a backstory and characters, lore, and enemies their own backstories and stuff like that, whether it's good or not is definitely arguable, and we should definitely touch upon that. But I think the role-playing elements are in this game, in that they do stretch beyond character customization.
Okay.
If that answered your question.
Kind of. Actually, what it sounded like is that you were saying it's contextual, because it still counts as a role if you're playing a role in combat. If you're the heavy, if you're the long distance.
Okay. Yeah.
Whereas there's another type of role playing, which is your character and motivations within the plot drive your decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so a game like Destiny is maybe more focused on combat, because I don't really know where a character I don't know where any of your decisions change the story. I didn't ever see anything like that, or I didn't see where even your decisions interact with the story. Something that kind of bothered me about some of the missions, which we can get to later, is that you don't actually do anything except shoot enemies.
Right. Yeah. Very true.
You get to a little terminal, you send out Tyrion Lannister to go figure out to go do something, and all he does is go, this is interesting, or I'm trying to open up this door, and then you get flooded with enemies, and then he figures it out just at the the last minute, and you move on to the next section where you then have him open another door and you kill a bunch of enemies and you move on. So you don't actually do anything. It's not like you ever have to enter in a code to open that door. Like even in Just Cause, there were certain things you would blow up, and you would have to put in you would have to press buttons in the right order. Square, triangle, cross, circle, triangle, square in a certain amount of time to set off the bomb, and then you had to run away. So that, there's a little bit of dynamism in the gameplay there. Whereas Destiny, it's purely shooting.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That doesn't exactly segue nicely into my next question, but how do you feel about the equipment management menus?
You know what? I'm actually a fan of it, and I spent some time analyzing it. As weird as that sounds, you use your one of your thumbsticks on your controller, and you control a little circle that you move around the screen to click through menus, and
it acts kind of like a mouse.
Yeah, and it does that thing where once you're getting close to one of the buttons on the screen you can hit, it kind of like it widens up a little bit, so it changes the animation and it slows down, and then when you move away from it, it speeds up again. You're right, it's like a mouse that you're controlling with your thumbstick. I personally really like it, and I think it feels really, really good. For this style of game, I think I do prefer it to a menu system where you would just be clicking through, say, squares on a grid on a screen with like a D-pad or something like that. But that's just me. How about you?
I don't really know. I found it intuitive enough. I feel like a different menu system might be faster, and maybe because I'm used to that different menu system, I would prefer it.
Uh-huh.
Um, but let me just break it down. You go to that equipment screen, and you've got your guns on the left-hand side.
Uh-huh.
You've got your armor on the right-hand side,
Yeah.
and you have basically 3 slots for weapons, whereas in Halo you had 2, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And Destiny has broken them down into 3 types of weapons. You have your primary, which typically consists of pistols and rifles, and you have your special, or at least that's for Hunter. I don't know what Titans get or Warlocks get. You've got your primary, you've got your secondary, or special as it's called, and then you've got your heavy. Is that true for the Titan as well?
Yeah. Primary.
Secondary heavy,
Secondary. Yes.
or primary special heavy?
Yeah.
I don't know why it's not called secondary, but whatever. Maybe they don't want to. I don't know. They're trying to be politically correct with the weapons. I don't know.
Right.
This weapon's special. And one of the things that I really like actually is that they did open up a third weapon, because in Halo at times you felt a little restricted having only 2. It's really nice because on the PlayStation you just hit triangle to swap between the 2,
Uh-huh.
and then if you want your heavy, you press and hold triangle, and it
Yeah.
pulls up your third weapon, which is a really elegant solution to 3 weapons and only 1 rotation button.
Yeah.
And they're pretty clever with that overall. You also have, I'm sorry, this is off topic a little bit, but you also have a supercharged weapon. With the Hunter, it's essentially the golden gun, and for a long time it kills any enemy with 1 shot.
Oh.
But you get 3 rounds with it, so if you've got like 3 wizards coming at you, you do 1, 2, 3, and down they go. As you go along, it's not quite as powerful anymore, and some of those giant ogres take like 12 shots or something. But this is a weapon that charges over the course of time. I don't know if it increases as you kill more enemies, but I feel like there are disciplines, which we can get into in a minute, that help increase the recharge rate. And you hit L1, R1 on the PlayStation, and that pulls up your special weapon. Is that true for the Titan as well?
Oh, okay. So you're saying that L1, R1 on that build of Hunter that you're going with is what initiates your golden gun state.
Yes.
Okay, so L1, R1 for my Defender class Titan is actually what puts the bubble over us.
Okay.
Which has
So it's still a special move. And does that charge then?
Yes, and then different modifiers in the game change how quickly that charges. It's a combination of charging over time, and I could be wrong on this, but I think you can get certain abilities that speed that process up. Killing enemies, I think, speeds it up. You can get things where grenade damage or grenade kills speed it up. Different things like that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. So we've got our 3 weapons that we can cycle through. We have our special moves, L1, R1. You also have grenade, and Hunter also has that knife. Do you have something in addition to grenade?
My fist.
Your fist. Okay.
Yeah.
So then Hunter also has melee.
Right.
I've got the throwing knife, and then the same button will activate my standard melee attack. So in that screen, you don't actually toggle any of the special moves, but you just toggle your weapons. As you draw that cursor over the primary weapon, it opens up another 6 boxes, I think, and you can select which weapon you equip as your primary, and then or as the weapon for that slot. And you go down the line. As you said, it gets a little slow. That cursor moves a little slower as you put it over that piece of the equipment, so you can more carefully choose which weapon you want. One of the things I really like is that you can then hit, I think it's R2, and it will compare. It'll throw up another screen right next to the stats for that weapon, and you can compare the weapon you have equipped with the weapon you're looking at very directly, which is nice. It'll even show you in the like rate of fire section, where they have like 3 or 4, rate of fire, impacts,
range,
size, things like that. Range. It'll actually show you the difference between the 2. You won't have to guess. So it's really nice. It's really intuitive. I really like the ability to access a lot of information very quickly. But I don't know if I prefer that, because it still feels a little sloppy trying to maneuver that little thing around the screen with a thumbstick as opposed to just hitting up and down on a D-pad to get to the right menu.
Okay.
Maybe just use the D-pad and it would be faster, more intuitive for me. But
do you wish they did a thing where, let's say we're not getting rid of thumbstick is your cursor on the screen, but where once you were using the thumbstick to hover over your primary weapon, and it opened up the box of 6, do you wish you could just use like the D-pad to like just snap to each one of the 6 that you maybe had like loaded in there?
I know several times I was in a menu and I would accidentally slide off the box that I was looking for, and it would take me to the next section down and have to restart. You know, It would be like if you were in Windows and you clicked and you right-clicked, and then you had to go down to the next menu and pop open the new window to get to the sub-menu, and then you accidentally slid off and you have to go back up and re-access that menu.
Okay.
That happened a lot because the thumbstick is not as accurate as a mouse.
Right.
So it's a little sloppy. It's not that big of a deal. You know, it's not like it took a lot of time to reset or anything like that. But it works. Yeah. It's perfectly functional, and you also have access to a lot of other menus at the same time. You can always hit the option button to bring you to the next, to like your personal level menu, and then you can also hit R2 to bring you to your like your items menu.
Oh yeah, L1 and R1 will bring
L1
you
R1 to bring you to the items menu.
Yeah, from your weapons.
So it's a pretty it's pretty multifunctional menu system. It works pretty well.
Hold that thought for just 1 second.
Yeah.
I'm gonna edit this part out. I have to go to the bathroom so bad.
Do it.
But it'll be really quick. I'll be right
No
back.
problem.